Hello, my name is Aubrey Williams, and today I will be talking about three different learning activities that can be used um, to help essential education out. Essential education is a learning management system that we use at my job. So, for our last assignment using the OSCQR model, I evaluated essential education and found that um, the platform needs some engaging activities for students. Most students that primarily use essential education as their mode of study in my work setting find that the program lacks and it's not quite engaging for students. So that was like the biggest um, thing that I found within this learning management system as I evaluated it. So I'm going to dive right in on looking at some of the assignments that I created. Um, so um, the first one, which is the first asynchronous activity, is going to be a crossword puzzle. So crossword puzzles can help students understand and remember the content, especially when it's used in a format like I created it. So, in math, as everybody knows, math is its own language. And without understanding that language, students will oftentimes have troubles in understanding math. So, what I did was using H5P, I took one of the um, lessons, which I saw was a crossword, and I thought that this would be an interesting asynchronous activity that students can work on their own. So, in this assignment, the purpose of this assignment was to help students become more familiar with important algebraic terms and concepts. So, by completing this crossword puzzle, you'll be able to reinforce your understanding of key vocabulary terms, excuse me, that will be essential for solving algebraic problems and working with equations. So, it's basically your typical crossword puzzle. So here's the instructions. Students are going to read the clues, and each clue represents an algebra concept or term, and the clues that are given are definitions. So once they understand, what the definition is, they'll fill in the respective word that goes into it as they fill it in the grid. Uh, Students can check their work after completing the puzzle, make sure that they understand the answers, and then they can reflect on the vocabulary and what these definitions mean and what these words mean. So as they move forward into algebra, they'll be able to um, understand and have a good solid foundation as they move forward in learning um, this particular subject area. So, excuse me. So I just created this crossword here. So, you know, it's got, for example, number two across says the process of finding the value of a variable. So students will fill in the answer, um, and then, they'll just keep going. So I'm going to quickly show the solution so we can kind of get an idea of like what it all would look like once it's complete. So but this is a great learning activity, a great asynchronous learning activity. I find that crossword puzzles, when used in this particular manner, can definitely help students learn definitions and learn the terminology. The second lesson, asynchronous activity that I designed using Now Comment was a math interview assignment. So um, this assignment here The objective of this is for students to interview each other in virtual groups and solve algebra and geometry problems, explaining their reasoning and reinforcing their understanding by interviewing each other. So each group will conduct interviews where one student poses a problem and the other responds with an explanation. So this will rotate roles within the group and ensure that everyone practices both asking and explaining. So as an asynchronous activity, this will be done virtually. So not all the students will be working on this at the same time, but as the students work in groups, they'll be able to, work in their respective time setting. So excuse me, what I did was create a couple problems for algebra and geometry. So there's two in algebra, two in geometry. And the interview format is, provided here. So each student again will answer one of the four problems, and the interview will include a step-by-step explanation, concept explanation, and then if the student wants to use visual aids to make it more beautiful, if you will, then they can use visual aids to help them and help everybody see what everybody else is working on. Just a kid. Some students are visual learners. Like I myself am a visual learner, so I love visual aids because they help me understand visually what is going on, and I'm able to connect in a visual manner. So in math, I think it's important for students to present different ways or show different ways of how to learn material because not all students learn the same. So that's a very important concept for students. So in this assignment, there's going to be questions that we'll use. Um, so for the person asking, can you explain how you would solve for x in the equation 2x plus 5 equals 15? Some questions to consider are what steps did you take to isolate x? Or could you walk me through the steps you took to solve the problem? And I did use ChatGPT to assist me with creating some of these questions. Um, and again, another example is how would you simplify the expression 3 times the quantity of x minus 2 plus 4 times the quantity of 2x plus 1? So, what are the first steps you take? So, answering these questions, if students are able to answer these questions, then they're going to be able to, again, gain a solid foundation. Um, and they're going to be able to draw connections among these ideas and concepts. And I think that is very important to understanding math. So, again, after the students get done here, there's going to be a post interview discussion and reflection. And then there will be an assessment and reflection section. So, the students will follow these instructions and uh, submit their assignment virtually to the instructor. Now, the last assignment that we had was a synchronous activity, um, and in this activity, I created a short lesson where students have to understand how to use the Pythagorean theorem. So, by the end of this lesson, students will understand the Pythagorean theorem and apply it to problem solving um, or apply it to solve problems involving right triangles. So here's our introduction. So as a class, we'll go over this assignment, and then what will happen is the students are going to be asked to use Google Docs to collaborate um, in understanding the Pythagorean theorem. So the Pythagorean theorem states that in a right triangle, the square of the length of the hypotenuse, which is the slanted side, um, is equal to the sum of the squares of the lengths of the other two sides. So the formula used in the Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So for this assignment, I used from the Harvard website the four or one of the activities that was given to us on that particular site was the generate, sort, connect, and elaborate. So using these four concepts, this is how I created the assignment. So students are going to be asked, what do we know? Let's generate some ideas. So, I created a question. So, think about right triangles. What do we know about the relationships between the sides? So, students in their Google Doc are going to be asked to generate thoughts about right triangles, encourage them to consider. Now, this is for the teacher. I will encourage them to consider what the properties are or relationships that they might know about right triangles. So, in their Google Docs, they're going to write down or generate their ideas as a group. And then so there's some questions to consider. What do you know about angles of right triangles? And have you seen the Pythagorean theorem used before in another setting? So next is sort. So here, students in the Google Doc are going to organize their thoughts by asking these two questions. What do we know? And then what do we need to know before solving the Pythagorean theorem? So here, the next slide says connect. So you're going to connecting the concept. So here, as a class, students will present a list of ideas where the Pythagorean theorem can be used in real world settings. And what's going to happen is the students are going to put this into the Google Doc, and then in their own words, they're going to continue to connect the dots by defining what is the Pythagorean theorem. And then, as a class, students will discuss what the Pythagorean theorem is and in what different settings, real world settings, there are that they can use the Pythagorean theorem in. And then in the Google Doc, they're going to write a summary about how the equation works and what the theorem tells them. And then they're also going to add into the discussion as a class, what does the Pythagorean theorem tell us about right triangles? And then lastly, elaborate. So here is where the students are going to practice problems and apply the Pythagorean theorem and putting it into practice. So you're going to have a set of problems, and the students are going to practice. So the problems will be both word problems and there'll be actual problems with given triangles. And the students will have to practice these problems so they can gain an understanding of how to use the Pythagorean theorem effectively. And lastly, we're going to just ask questions. And in the Google Doc, the students can put their questions in the questions section. And then as a class, we'll go over it together in a synchronous manner. So, using these three activities, students going to be able to, create, evaluate, analyze, apply, understand, and remember the things they need to learn in math, as well as gain a solid foundation of what it is they need to learn. So this concludes my presentation, and enjoy your day.